Birmingham, 2020. Emergency services are called to the Crowne Plaza Hotel following reports of a stabbing.
He arrived at the hotel with a knife, which he pulled out and stabbed him once in the chest.
He dropped the knife, fled the scene, he panicked, he got out of there.
First responders arrived to find a young man with a single stab wound to the chest, fighting for his life in the hotel corridor.
A lot of staff did their best to actually resuscitate and keep him alive, but he was then pronounced dead at the scene by the ambulance.
The victim is quickly identified as 20-year-old Panache Bacco.
Panache Bacco was at the hotel that day with his current girlfriend. They weren't in a relationship that long. They were spending the afternoon together.
For a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old, this is quite the occasion. So, of course, she's posted it on social media. And Mohammed Khan has seen it.
19-year-old Mohammed Khan arrives to the Crowne Plaza Hotel with his friend 18-year-old Cesar Bello to confront the couple.
Khan and Bello made their way up to the room, barged in and immediately demanded what he claimed was his money back.
And then the argument began, and that's when the argument led out into the actual hallway of the hotel.
The stab wound to Panache's chest turned out to be fatal. It killed him.
Panache's girlfriend retracts her initial statement, which she gave to police at the hotel.
Within hours, she had changed her story that the stabber was not Khan, but Cesar Bello.
A murder inquiry is launched, but with 2 suspects on the run and an unreliable witness, police are faced with a daunting challenge.
There were certain sightings in the southeast London area around Kidbrooke and Abbey Wood.
Jealousy, rivalry and rage lead to a shocking murder of a young man in one of Birmingham's most well-known hotels. Will investigators be able to find those responsible? Birmingham is a bustling and dynamic city situated in the West Midlands region of England.
The city of Birmingham, it's the second largest city in the United Kingdom. It's a very vibrant city. It's very multicultural, very diverse.
It's sprawling over the West Midlands, and there's many different cultures in those areas.
It has all its issues with a lot of gangs, a lot of postcode crime, a lot of drug crime, a lot of street crime. And we'll have the areas that you really won't want to go to.
It's high on crime and violent crime. One of the last surveys showed that crime in Birmingham was 39% higher than in other cities.
On the 21st of July, 2020, emergency services receive a report of a violent incident where a young man has been injured at the Crowne Plaza Hotel.
The Crowne Plaza in Birmingham is a city centre hotel, so it's in the middle of the city. It's on a square called Central Square on Holliday Street.
It's one of the more upmarket hotels in the city. It's right in the centre, very easy access to all parts of the city.
First responders arrive at the scene and discover a man with a single stab wound to his chest.
When police attend incidents like this, their first priority would be preservation of life. Is there anything we can do to save him, either on our own or in conjunction with the paramedics? And that would be their immediate priority.
The victim is identified as 20-year-old Panache Bacco. He is a guest staying at the hotel, along with his girlfriend, who is also at the scene.
Bacco was still barely alive. The stab wound to his chest had clearly penetrated something vital, and there was nothing that could be done for him.
Police now launch a full-scale murder investigation.
the hotel room would be closed down as a crime scene, but so would the corridor they were in. So would the means of escape, to make sure that they were securing that in case of any forensics, fingerprints, DNA, etc. So in actual fact, this hotel, part of it would have been treated as a crime scene.
The police will do some background checks. They will speak to family, friends of the victim. They will try and trace family and friends of the suspect. They will speak to people at the hotel. They will speak to other witnesses. They will try and build up as much of a picture as possible to the background, to the events leading up to the actual murder itself.
We're led to believe that it was the start of a relationship, or at least that this was the beginning of a possible relationship between the two of them, because she had just come out of a relationship.
The girlfriend's ex, as she looked upon him, was Mohammed Khan.
Prior to dating Panache Bako, the young woman had previously been in a relationship with 19-year-old Mohammed Suleiman Khan for 18 months.
He was very possessive, domineering, controlling over his girlfriend, whom he still thought was his.
It was a somewhat inappropriate relationship because he met his girlfriend when he was 17 and he was 3 years older than her. So that would have made her 14. If a teenage girl goes out with a boy who is over 2 years older than her, then her risk of being a victim of domestic violence from that boy increased.
Panache's girlfriend had been posting pictures earlier that day on social media of the couple's romantic stay at the hotel.
As is the case nowadays, where young people are updating their social media all the time as to where they are, what they're doing, etc. This young girl and Panache were doing exactly that. They were putting on social media that they were at the hotel.
The Crowne Plaza is a 3-star hotel in Birmingham, so this isn't your luxury stay, but nevertheless for a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old, this is quite the occasion. So of course she's posted it on social media.
When you put pictures out on social media, you have no control over who sees them.
Unfortunately, Mohammed Khan saw that post and reacted in a very negative way.
Khan now bombards his ex-girlfriend with text messages and phone calls.
I can only speculate on what these phone calls were about, but he clearly wasn't happy with the fact that his ex-girlfriend was now at a hotel with a new man.
Khan was prone to the green-eyed monster, and nothing can strike at the heart of somebody who's prone to jealousy more than social media posts.
I believe that posting was most likely on things like Snapchat rather than Facebook or Instagram. You've then got the situation that he's been able to locate them, and that can only really be done by location or GPS, which of course Snapchat has in Snap Map. So I believe it was the social media that was able to identify exactly where they were.
He had the opinion that she owed him money, that she was in debt to him.
When he doesn't get anything from her, he decides that he's going to go to the Crowne Plaza and he's going to confront them himself.
Mohammed Khan gets in contact with a friend of his to accompany him to the hotel. They plan to confront Khan's ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend, Panache Bako.
Khan did not go to the Crowne Plaza Hotel by himself. He brought along a friend, Cesar Bello.
18-year-old Cesar Bello has a history of violence and already has a criminal record for possession of a deadly weapon.
He is known for possessing knives. There's also pictures available of him on the internet posing with a very big hunting knife. This was a man well known to be carrying weapons.
Bello primarily was there as protection or some added muscle to be used by Khan to reinforce the situation.
Khan arrives at the hotel and waits in the lobby for Bello to join him.
He's there to either take his ex-girlfriend back home with him or to harass her in any way that he can and make sure that she does not have a good time with her new man.
CCTV at the hotel shows that Khan arrived at 6:25, but he didn't go straight up to the room to confront her. He waited there for 20 minutes, and at 6:45 he was joined by Cesar Bello.
When Bello arrives at the Crown Plaza Hotel, he has a knife concealed in his jacket.
Khan was able to find out what room they're in. How's he found that? Has he phoned her? Has she actually told him what room she's in? Because most receptions won't tell him. So there's things here we don't know what the answers are.
The two young men are prepared for a confrontation as they search the hotel for Khan's ex-girlfriend and her new partner. What begins as a tense encounter quickly escalates into something deadly. Birmingham, July 2020. 20-year-old Panache Bako has booked into the Crown Plaza Hotel with his new girlfriend, but a jealous ex-boyfriend, 19-year-old Mohammed Suleiman Khan, has tracked the couple down after a series of social media posts about their romantic getaway together. Khan has brought his friend, 18-year-old Caesar Bello, for backup, who is concealing a knife in his jacket.
Khan claimed that she owed him money and he wanted that debt repaid, but it's no coincidence that she was in a hotel room with her new boyfriend.
Khan and Bello stalk the hotel corridors in search of the couple.
He doesn't know Panache, but what he does know is that there is a guy there with his ex-girlfriend. He's probably a bit worried, so I think for safety and a bit of courage, he's actually asked a friend to come along.
Khan sends his ex-girlfriend more threatening messages and soon learns the exact room number where the couple are staying.
This is jealousy. This is rage. It's wanting to control a girlfriend.
Khan and Bello made their way up to the room where Panache was staying, barged in and immediately demanded what he claimed was his money back.
He was saying the ex-girlfriend owed him money. So he started to try and get hold of her property, as if it was payment for the money that was owed to him. And Panache stepped in and tried to stop this happening.
Flashpoint came when Khan decided to take some of the ex-girlfriend's belongings in lieu of the money that wasn't forthcoming. And that was the flashpoint because Panache took offence to that, as you'd expect.
It's then that Panache intervenes to defend his girlfriend.
A brawl breaks out and the two are fighting with each other in the bedroom of the Crown Plaza Hotel. Then it breaks out into the corridor.
And then what happens next is disputed. But unquestionably, somehow a knife appeared and the knife was plunged into Panache's heart. He dropped to the floor, blood spilling everywhere.
He wasn't expecting perhaps it would go that far, but then again, the only reason somebody carries a knife like that is, one, for protection, and two, to use and to threaten.
Khan and Bello flee the scene before police arrive. As Panache lies bleeding on the floor of the corridor, his terrified girlfriend calls the emergency services.
Panache's girlfriend phoned 999, and in actual fact, the recording of this telephone call was played in court. What that demonstrated was how upsetting it was for her, which is completely understandable.
Hotel staff try to keep Panache breathing until paramedics arrive on scene.
You then have a scene of chaos. It's frantic. The hotel staff are trying to help the victim. They're giving him CPR. They're giving him mouth-to-mouth. They're trying to keep him alive.
Paramedics, sadly, despite their efforts, are unable to save Panache's life.
Panache had just passed his 20th birthday. He came from a large family and a very close family.
A young chap, no previous convictions, well thought of by his peers, by his friends, and obviously the loving son to his family.
Much loved son, grandson, brother, friend. His nickname was PP or Papi, and everyone was devastated at his death.
Police quickly launch a murder investigation and seal off the scene for technical examination.
Once they're satisfied they've been through the steps of preserving life, is to preserve the crime scene. And that is often done by using crime scene tape or inside a premises, as we are in a hotel, by closing down a certain part of it.
The first few hours are so crucial because that is when the forensic evidence is at its most available and most potent. If they can harvest what is available immediately, the investigation can swing in the right direction at the earliest possible moment.
Initially, they're going to be looking for any evidence that if they don't get hold of it there and then, it can go missing. And we refer to this as the golden hour. Those initial early stages after a crime has been committed, when evidence is most abundantly available. And if you get it wrong, it makes it very difficult later on to solve a crime.
They send in the forensic teams to photograph the scene, gather as much evidence of a forensic nature that is possible. They speak to any potential witnesses, and then they come up with a hypothesis as to what actually happened and work from there.
Police speak to hotel staff and guests, including Panache's girlfriend, to establish what happened. She is the only eyewitness of the attack.
Initially, they're going to want to make sure that anybody that was there that may have seen or heard something, they get hold of there and then to speak to them. Is anything been discarded by the suspects? Could they have taken some clothing off or something like that? Could they have dropped something else belonging to them?
There is a prime witness at the hotel, and that is Khan's ex-partner. So, shook up and devastated as she must be, she's able to give a very clear account of what happened, and she was quite unequivocal that it was Khan who had produced the knife and had stabbed Bako.
The first thing the girlfriend said to the police was that the person who had stabbed Panache was Sully, which was the nickname for Mohammed Khan.
The crime scene cordon around it will only allow in certain people who've got certain tasks. And one of those will be the forensics teams, and they will be going in to try and build a picture of what's gone on.
It does not take investigators long to locate the murder weapon, which was used to stab Panache Bako.
The murder weapon was a knife, which was then replaced in its sheath and dropped at the scene.
It was carried to the crime scene, used, and then the knife was then put back in the sheath and left by the lift, which is again very odd when you think of the state of panic that would have been in Mohammed Khan's mind at that time that this had happened.
When police arrived, they found the bloodstained knife in its sheath by the lift in the corridor.
When people are involved in violent incidents, they're going to know that the police are going to get involved, and they don't want to be linked with this crime scene. So they're going to be keen to take any evidence like that with them so they can later dispose of it, thus distancing themselves from the crime. If you leave the knife, the murder weapon, at the scene, that's going to have your fingerprints, your DNA on it.
Investigators interview Panache's girlfriend at the scene, and she informs them that it was Khan who produced the knife and stabbed Panache in the chest before fleeing the scene with Bello.
It wouldn't have been difficult for the police to identify who it was that attacked and killed Panache because so many people there knew Khan.
The first thing she'd say to the police was, my ex-partner, Mohammed Khan, has killed Panache. That's the first disclosure we've got of who's done this.
Police now launch a manhunt for 19-year-old Mohammed Khan and 18-year-old Cesar Bello, appealing to the public for help.
These situations, you look at methodology, you look at why, you look at motive, you look at victimology. Mohammed Khan, no previous convictions. And then you've got the fact that Cesar Bello, we do know, has got previous convictions for carrying offensive weapons, in this case a knife, but also one of these individuals who likes to post himself and film himself on social media, brandishing a number of knives to basically show off about what weaponry he does carry and what sort of threat he is to society.
Now, it is time for police to inform Panache's family of the tragic death of their loved one.
One of the most important roles in a murder investigation is that of the family liaison officer, FLO. And it's their job to be the point of contact between the victim's family and the investigation team.
One of the worst things a police officer has to deal with is what they call the death knock, and that is to go round to the family of a victim and tell the family that, in this case, their 20-year-old son would not be coming home. It's very, very upsetting.
After his death, Panaché's family were very vocal, saying they'd been robbed of a son. The community were horrified at Panaché's death. His funeral was very well attended. All his friends and family wore t-shirts saying justice for Panaché.
To understand how a person died, you have to understand how they lived. An important element of that is to speak to the family and build up a good picture of the victim's life. Also, the family will want to understand what's going on, what are the police investigation team doing, what's going to happen next. It would be the job of the family liaison officer to keep the family informed about all the steps that will go through in a murder investigation.
Police are now urgently trying to locate their two prime suspects in Bako's murder, 19-year-old Mohammed Khan and 18-year-old Cesar Bello. Bako's girlfriend says it was Khan who stabbed Panaché, but police need to arrest both men to figure out what really happened in that hotel corridor. On the 21st of July 2020, 20-year-old Panaché Bako was murdered after a violent confrontation at the Crown Plaza Hotel in central Birmingham. Panaché had checked into the hotel with his new girlfriend for a romantic stay.
She was so pleased about this, the fact that they were at one of the biggest hotels in Birmingham, that she posted a lot of pictures on social media of the two of them together.
Mohammed Khan, who had previously been dating Panaché's girlfriend, sees the couple's social media posts and flies into a jealous rage. He arrives at the hotel with his friend Cesar Bello, and Panaché is stabbed once in the chest, ultimately causing his death.
Fights happen all of the time between men, and usually they're not fatal, and this certainly would not have been fatal had it not been for the fact that there was a knife.
Khan and Bello fled the scene and are now on the run. Police work quickly to track them down.
Their immediate priority was to get hold of him as quickly as possible. One, so he doesn't dispose and get rid of evidence, and two, so he's not a danger to anybody else.
Police launch a public appeal for Khan and Bello to hand themselves in.
Once the police have established exactly who the suspect is, a search warrant is granted and the police are looking for that individual to bring them in for questioning.
Khan was very, very quickly picked up by the police, and he was found with blood-stained clothes.
The police searched Khan's car. In the boot of the car, they found a bag, and in that bag were 2 mobile phones and some clothing. On the clothing was blood that the police were able to match as belonging to Panache.
And the telephones told the story of the relentless stalking, I would say, of his ex-girlfriend via her social media account and then via phone calls and text.
When mobile phones are seized, police will take them and they will send them to either the laboratory or there's some software at the police station that will allow them to download the contents on it. In this day and age, phones are so pivotal to murder investigations. If the police can access it, they can build up a real good picture of you, your life, your movements, and importantly, your communications with other people.
While Cesar Bello remains on the run, chief suspect Mohammed Khan is held on remand while awaiting trial for Bako's murder.
Remand is when someone is remanded in prison awaiting trial. So if someone is charged with an offence and they are remanded into custody, they go straight from the court to prison to await trial.
Weeks turn to months, with Cesar Bello still at large. Panaché's family continue to appeal via social media platforms for the young man to hand himself in.
Cesar Bello assaulted a paramedic at the scene and then fled. He went on the run and he was found beside London Bridge where he assaulted a police officer and then he went into hiding.
Investigators are confident they have gathered enough evidence to convict Khan in a court of law for the murder of Panaché. But then, something unexpected happens, which could jeopardise the entire case.
It turns out that Mohammed Khan had put quite a bit of pressure on his ex, and she'd been accused by him of snitching. So Mohammed Khan's ex-partner has retracted her statement. And so she, as well as Mohammed Khan, have tried to implicate Bello in the stabbing of Panache.
Within hours, she had changed her story that the stabber was not Khan, but the second suspect, Cesar Bello. But she said that Khan had clearly either instructed or egged him on or encouraged him by saying, "You've got to do it."
During the argument, the victim said to Khan, "If you're going to do it, just do it." And that led to Khan killing the victim.
The two of them, when it had happened, said, "Whoa, what have we done?" Clearly indicated to police that these two were in it together.
DNA analysis of the knife used to stab Panache provides no clear answer as to who delivered the fatal blow.
Quite often, a crime will be committed, and the forensics will be used as a process to try and recreate what has gone on. So later on at court, it can be explained to a judge and a jury. Fingerprints, DNA, who's touched what and where. Building up that picture later on for court so they can go in and the prosecution can give a real good understanding to the jury of what went on in this incident.
On this occasion, the murder weapon bore the DNA of three people, of Cesar Bello, Mohammed Khan, and the victim himself, Panache Bako.
Police now need to find Cesar Bello if the court case is to proceed as planned.
It did put a bit of pressure on the investigation because this was a joint venture. You've got two people who've attended that hotel and killed Panache Bako. So you really want to have both in custody.
Cesar Bello being on the run is a big problem because, of course, there's a trial date that's been set, and really they can't have the trial until the investigation is fully wrapped up. And to do that, they need to have Bello, they need to question him and find out if he was involved, and if so, how. Or he could be a prime witness.
Panache's grieving family are frustrated by the delay in getting justice for their murdered loved one and offer a £5,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of Bello.
Panache's family are very, very keen to have some sort of justice and have justice sooner rather than later. So they put out a £5,000 reward for any information leading to Bello being picked up.
Bello fled to London. He was on the run for 3 months or so before police were able to put him in custody as well.
Bello's been on the run for 3 months, and quite frankly, he's had enough of it and he hands himself in to police.
Mohammed Khan and Cesar Bello now await trial for the murder of Panache Bako. Both men deny any responsibility for Panache's death and accuse one another of delivering the fatal blow that ended his life in the corridor of the Crowne Plaza Hotel. How will the jury make sense of the cutthroat defences of the two men? Will justice prevail for Panache Bako? Birmingham, May 2021. 19-year-old Mohammed Khan and 18-year-old Cesar Bello are on trial at Stafford Crown Court, charged with the murder of 20-year-old Panache Bako.
The trial was at Stafford Crown Court virtually 12 months after the murder. There had been certain delays, obviously, until they could get Bello into custody.
Panache was fatally stabbed during a row that broke out at the Crowne Plaza Hotel in July 2020. Khan had previously been in a relationship with Panache's new girlfriend and became enraged when pictures were posted on social media of the new couple in their hotel room.
At 7 p.m. that evening, Khan and Cesar Bello arrived at the Crowne Plaza Hotel and went to Panache's room. There was an argument that ensued after Khan tried to get some personal items belonging to his ex-girlfriend.
We know it began in the room because we know there was the rifling through the bag and what Mohammed Khan was actually saying about money being owed to him by the girl. Panache said, "You can't do this," and then said, "Leave the room, get out of the room," and they went out into the corridor of the hotel.
The altercation between Khan and Panache started off in the hotel room, but it soon spilled out into the corridor.
Ultimately, it ended up with Panache being stabbed in the chest.
The whole action of taking out the knife, unsheathing it, stabbing Bako probably happened in a matter of seconds. And yet, that takes Bako's life and is going to affect numerous other lives, not least Khan's.
In her initial statement to police, Panache's girlfriend says it was Mohammed Khan who drove the knife into Panache's chest. But she switches the blame to Cesar Bello following numerous coercive phone calls with Khan while he is in prison.
You've now also got the girl changing her story, saying she didn't say it was Mohammed Khan. Now, why would she do that? Is that she still has feelings for Mohammed Khan? Were they still in a relationship? What has happened there?
It's just him trying to control the situation and control his girlfriend. I think that he was hoping that he'd be able to walk away from this with Bello having been framed for his own actions and, of course, with a girlfriend on his arm still.
The police obviously were clearly angered by what had happened, how she had changed her evidence, how she'd become basically an unreliable witness, even though she was the only independent person to have seen what had happened.
Police learn that Panache's girlfriend had been in contact with both of the defendants leading up to the trial.
Not only does she meet with Khan, where he puts pressure on her to retract her statement and not snitch on him as he sees it, but also she's willing to meet with Bello while he's on the run, and it makes the police question everything that she has told them. It seems quite clear that the most honest she's been able to be was right at the very, very beginning of this, when her initial statement was made before Bello or Khan were able to get to her.
The trial opens with the prosecution laying out their case against Mohammed Khan and Cesar Bello.
In this case, the prosecution pitched their case specifically on Cesar Bello being the man who stabbed Panache, but that they acted in joint enterprise with Khan. Khan was the one with blood on his clothing, Khan was the one with the motive to see off his love rival, and Bello was the one who stabbed him. That was the prosecution's case.
So much of the evidence here is being relied on the actual first interview of the girl that was on the scene, because she said who did it, that it was a stab wound by Mohammed Khan, and Mohammed Khan has got Panache's blood on his clothing. So straight away you've now got that continuity of evidence plus forensic evidence, which is now weighing heavily to prove that he actually was the murderer.
During the trial, Khan and Bello mount a cutthroat defence in the courtroom as they blame each other for delivering the fatal stab wound that killed Panache.
Each of them said the other one was the one who had stabbed Panache Bako. This is known in legal terms as a cutthroat defence, and prosecutors are normally overjoyed when a cutthroat defence occurs, because the statistics show that juries, more often than not, decide to convict both defendants, believing both of them are lying, and it makes the prosecution's case much easier.
Both defendants take the stand and give contradictory accounts of what happened that evening in the Crown Plaza Hotel.
Cesar Bello went into the witness box and said, "I didn't do it, I didn't bring the knife, I had no idea what was about to happen. It was Khan who stabbed Panache." Mohammed Khan went into the witness box and said, "I had no idea there was going to be a stabbing, I didn't bring the knife. In fact, Bako was the one who came at me first, but it was Cesar Bello who stabbed him, I had nothing to do with it."
The judge makes the decision to reduce the murder charges against both men to manslaughter and robbery.
Because you had Bello versus Khan, two defendants, they weren't charged with joint venture, we didn't have that, but what you did have was, well, who's murdered? And eventually the murder charge was dropped and both looked at manslaughter charges because both pleaded not guilty to murder.
The difference between murder and manslaughter is mens rea, and that is Latin for guilty mind. So there has to be an intent.
To commit murder, You have to intend to either seriously harm someone or kill them. The jury weren't satisfied that that was what was in his mind at the time he stabbed Panache. In their minds, the intent to either commit really serious harm or murder wasn't there.
He had got into this fisticuff fight, and then in the midst of all of this, he had acted impulsively without really thinking through the consequences and without intending to kill.
The judge leaves the case open to the jury, having directed them on both the charges of murder and manslaughter.
There were four main strands of evidence. First of all, you had the witness statements. You then had CCTV taken from the hotel, of the corridor, of the confrontation. The blood of the victim was found on his clothes. And lastly, police had the text messages between Khan and his ex-girlfriend.
On the 28th of May, 2021, the jury fined Mohammed Khan guilty of the manslaughter of Panache Bako. Cesar Bello is found not guilty, but admitted to previously assaulting an emergency worker and is sentenced to 2 months in prison, which he has already served on remand.
Bello got away with it quite lightly. He was not found guilty of murder or manslaughter because he was just there really to back up his friend. He had no idea of what this was going to turn into. Going on the run just made everything worse, as did, of course, assaulting the emergency worker who was doing their level best to save Panache's life at that point.
The family of Panache Bako are extremely disappointed with the results of the trial.
The victim's family to this day still maintain that Cesar Bello was more involved than what the court found, and they're still campaigning that he be reinvestigated over his role in this offence.
On the 6th of August 2021, Mohammed Khan returns to court for sentencing.
For manslaughter, Khan was given a prison sentence of 14 years. Now, when it comes to manslaughter, that's a substantial sentence, which I believe is a reflection of what took place.
Mohammed Khan received a 14-year sentence for manslaughter, but he still maintained that Cesar Bello had committed the crime, and Bello said that Khan had committed the crime.
It would have been a difficult decision for the jury to make that definition between is it murder or is it manslaughter. And the fact that he got 14 years clearly puts it on the upper end of manslaughter, which was reflected in what is a really substantive sentence for that offence.
In July 2022, Khan appeals his conviction.
The appeal went to the appeal court in front of 3 of the most senior judges in England, and it was based on 2 counts. Firstly, the judge had no right to introduce the manslaughter charge as an alternative because it played no part in the prosecution's case. Secondly, the actual jury decision was described as perverse and completely did not reflect the Crown's case in any way or form. The Crown's case was that Bello was the one who had stabbed Panache, and Bello was the one the jury had cleared.
If somebody's got very little empathy and very little remorse, then there's no point appealing to the better side of that person.
Mohammed Khan has never shown any remorse or apologised to the victim's family.
The judges produced an 18-page judgment and dismissed all the applications. They said that the judge had every right to introduce the manslaughter option and said there was no evidence to suggest that the jury had made a perverse verdict. They said that Khan was the one with the motive to damage to his so-called love rival. Khan was the one who had blood on his clothing, indicating that he must have been close to the scene, really close. And that Bello himself was someone who's unacquainted with the whole love triangle and unacquainted with Panache Bako.
With Mohammed Khan now safely behind bars, Panache's family are left to grieve for the senseless loss of their son and brother.
With the conviction, there is a form of closure, but they've lost a much-loved son and brother.
Panache Bako was an ordinary boy, and he was obviously planning to have some sort of romantic date. He had no idea what was about to happen, and certainly at the point at which he started to fight with Mohammed Khan, he had no indication how this was going to escalate.
For a family that are going through the process of a murder investigation through to the trial, they're stuck in this limbo where they can't move on. If we lose someone, we're allowed to grieve and we can move on in our grieving process. When you're waiting for the trial, when you're waiting to see what's going to happen at court, it's very difficult for the families to move on. More times than I can even remember at the end of trials I was involved in, the family would thank you in a way that they can start to move on.
The murder of Panache Bako highlights the dangers of posting personal information on social media.
Social media can be used as another weapon. It can be used as something to get at people, to stalk people, to track them down, to get information about them, and it can be used in all the wrong ways.
It doesn't mean it's automatically dangerous, but there's always that risk. When you use a device, there's a risk. If you can understand the risk, alleviate the risk, that reduces danger. So it doesn't mean that Snapchat shouldn't be used, but perhaps Snap Maps shouldn't be used. It's that type of thing with all sorts of social media. Device, apps, websites, none are created to be dangerous. They become dangerous because of the way they're used by the person, behavior.
If you have been in a relationship with somebody that is possessive and controlling, then the advice is make your social media private. But it's really not that behavior or any other behavior of the victim that is important. It is the behavior of the offender. Khan's ex-partner should have been able to post whatever she wanted on social media. She should have been able to post that she was at the Crowne Plaza with Panache Bako and not have it result in that knock on the door. But unfortunately, she'd been in this on-off relationship with somebody who was controlling and who ultimately would become violent. Not to her in this circumstance, but to Panache.
Knife crime remains a worrying issue among young people in the UK today.
As of March 2023, 41% of homicides in England and Wales are knife-related. That's just far too high.
I think there's no doubt that there's a problem in the UK with young people carrying knives. It's almost normalised now. I leave the house, I pick up my phone, I pick up my car keys. For too many young people in this country, what they're picking up is a knife.
Knives are being carried by very, very young boys because they want to protect themselves. If you carry a knife and you get into a fight, the chances are you're going to take the knife out and use it.
Had these young men been physically fighting each other, it wouldn't have been a great scene, but they would have eventually been prized apart and nobody would have lost their life. The fact that Khan brought a knife just escalated it.
The Criminal Justice Bill of 2023 saw fines being introduced in relation to people carrying knives, and also they've increased the sentence for knife-related crimes to a minimum of 4 years.
If society is telling you you've got to carry a knife, it's only going to be society that's going to tell you not to carry a knife. It's not going to be the police. It's not going to be legislation. So somewhere along the line, we've got to get society and parents to say, we've got to make a stand here.
What I heard too many times in my policing career when I was dealing with people who were caught with knives or were the victims of stabbings or themselves carried out stabbings, murders, etc., was the fact that they felt that they were safer carrying a knife. When what we know is the opposite is true. If you carry a knife, you're more likely to become a victim of violent crime yourself. So if there are any young people watching, listening, who are thinking of carrying a knife, my advice would be don't.